Bike Karma Bicycle Stories podcast is brought to you with support from The Frame and Wheel, helping you turn your cycling items into cash without the hassle, and AD Bikes, the modern face of Austro-Daimler bicycles. Become bike, become AD Bikes.
Episode 75.
Hello, and welcome to the Bike Karma Bicycle and Cycling Stories podcast. I'm your host, Tom Brown. If you like bicycles and stories, you're in the right place. The mission of the show is to bring people together for just a little bit of time through sharing stories about bicycles. Doesn't matter if you like riding, wrenching, or collecting, whether you're an expert or a novice. If you've ever smiled about a bicycle, then you're in the right place. If you've ever thrown your leg over a bicycle, you'll relate to stories such as, pedaling through the woods and finding a body. We're all scared of that. Or maybe you're cycling around a lake and you're looking for interesting creatures poking out of the waves. Been there too. Or maybe you wake up one morning and you're just like, hey, I'm just going to hop on my bike and pedal away from all my problems. In today's story, you'll hear from a guy who did just that. Twice. You have a ton of podcasts that you could be listening to, and I really appreciate you coming along with me for a ride on mine. Let's roll out. I'm not panicked, but help. SOBCS. Save our bicycle and cycling stories. I need your help with the show, and it's totally free and could be as little as just a couple minutes of your time. You are always welcome to drop a story in the voicemail of Bike Karma, or to email me or DM me and talk about a story that you'd like to share on the show. That's always an option. But today I'm specifically asking for a little help with the next episode. Did you ever have your brakes squeal? Or maybe one time you were riding around and all of a sudden your tire started to rub and make a woo woo sound. Maybe there was a pinging noise that you couldn't figure out what it was as you were riding through the woods. Or a creaking noise that seemed to be coming from the frame. I need to hear about your good and bad bike sounds. If there's a sound from a bicycle that's either caused you great joy or great pain, can you share it on the show? It could be as easy as leaving a voicemail. Hey, this is Roger from Alaska, and I hate when my brakes squeal. Just call the studio line at 860-740-2813. That's 860-740-2813. It can be anonymous. Hello, I am anonymous, and I am tickled by the sound of a brass bicycle bell. Or you could leave your name. You can even give a shout out to your shop, club, or cat. It's up to you. But the important part is to talk about the sound. Every time I hear cut wood fall to the ground, clump, 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 it reminds me of learning to ride my bike where I crashed into a wood pile multiple times. Was it something you tried to describe to the mechanic at the shop? No, it's kind of a whoosh, tick, whoosh, tick. Was it something that mysteriously came and then went away? Our mechanic drove this all over town and could not get that noise to come back. Is it the pleasing sound of the pawls clicking on a 90s vintage mountain bike? So you can either call and leave it as a short voicemail at 860-740-2813, or you could record it as a voice memo and email it to me at bikekarmaguy@gmail.com. Anything from the aggressive sound of big knobs on a mountain bike tire as it makes its way on the road between trails, or the soul-wrenching hiss of air as you realize you ran over something and now have a flat. Please and thank you for any help you can give me. And now back to the show. Do you ever daydream about just taking off on your bike and going wherever you want, leaving behind your worries and troubles and just pedaling away? I know somebody who kind of did that. They planned a bit more, tidied things up, said their goodbyes, and then did it. My friend Tony's actually done this more than once. The first time he called it half-jokingly his midlife crisis, but he said it gave him the time to check his bearings and start a new chapter in his life. And that new chapter has the freedom built into it so that he could do it again along the southern route of the United States. He was nice enough to share his adventures with us as he bikes solo through the desert, sometimes stealth camps, finds a gun paved right into the road, climbs from the Rio Grande all the way up to the highest peak he's ever biked up, meets lots of new people and canines, some of which are armed, sees giant movie stars in the desert, and gets lots of sand everywhere.
I'm going to wander across the street again in this West Texas sandstorm. When I walk out there, I come back, I've got sand in my teeth. I'm not kidding. Like, I'm blinking my eyes to get all the crust out, and I've got sand in my teeth. It's like 40-mile-an-hour gusts out there. I was not going riding today. And there's nothing to stop it out here. There's no trees. There's nothing. It's just, and it's throwing grit at your face at 40 miles an hour. Hello, this is Tony Cherolis. I'm currently in Texas, West Texas, and I'm joining Bicycle Karma and my friend Tom Brown to chat about a recent bike tour I'm on from New Orleans to San Diego, and just share a couple little stories about that ride and tips about bike touring and fun stuff in general.
Do you want to kind of connect the dots?
Oh, the dots are pretty fun. So I left engineering in 2015, went to the Center for Latino Progress in Hartford after my engineering career. I was working in the nonprofit world. I co-founded BCCO, a community bike shop, and the Transport Hartford Academy, both at the center with the director, Yanil Taron. And we had a lot of fun with bikes and with active transportation and transit. And in 2022, in June, I was ready for a change after 7 years. And I went on a 5-month bicycle tour, sabbatical / midlife crisis. And after 5 months, realized I needed to, connect back with people again, and I landed in Indianapolis, Indiana, where my sister and 2-year-old niece live, and a lot of my family lives in the Midwest, so I was moving closer to family, and I've been living there since. And my new job there, in my what I call semi-retirement, still working full-time, but it's a fun job. I'm working at Bicycle Garage Indy in Indianapolis, and they are, like most shops, slower in the winter, so I spread out my paid time off, and I can take time for bike tours in the winter. So this year, I took off December, and I'm taking off January. I'm riding from New Orleans to San Diego and then up to LA and taking the train back to Indiana. So I'm in the middle of that bike tour right now. So there's all sorts of different ways to bike tour and all different lengths of bike tours, from one night out to out for, I ran into a fellow, Matthias from Germany, who is near the end of a 2-year bike tour, and he was headed the opposite direction of me on this route. For this tour, I'm self-supported. I'm carrying front panniers and rear panniers, so bags on the fork and bags on the rack, and a foam mat on the top of the rear rack. I've got a small tent. I've got clothes. I've got bathroom necessities. I've got some electronics, a tablet computer, charging cords, first aid kit, and I have a little food bag up on the other side in the front. So I'm pretty self-contained. Most days I hit a store or a town, but with that kind of carrying capacity, I can go a few days if I have to, if I'm in a really remote or rural area, which happens sometimes down here in the Southwest. It's a mix of camping, staying with hosts. Warmshowers.com is awesome. It's like couch surfing, but for bike tourists. Sometimes, like today, I'm hiding from a frigid West Texas headwind dust storm. So I have 2 nights here in an almost ghost town in West Texas. So I'm in a cheap motel. It's a mix, but a lot of camping in there.
remember you were quite more adventurous than I was back when you were in Connecticut. You would go camping at places that I was I love exploring too. And you were just more so. You would go camping at places where I would feel like, oh, am I supposed to be here? You just go camping.
Oh yeah. The topic of rough camping or stealth camping, or primitive camping. Yeah. So if I'm riding along and there's a wooded area, there's a park, if there's not a no trespassing sign or a significant fence, it's pretty straightforward to just tuck in, a couple 100 feet, and get out of sight and just drop in for the evening. If you're not making a fire, if you're camping in a leave no trace sort of way, nobody knows and nobody really cares. So I've done that a lot in my bike touring. I've done it less in Texas because so much of the state is privately owned. Gun-toting, really not keen on trespassing. So here there are a lot more no trespassing signs, and there's very little public land. Stealth camping or, rough camping or primitive camping that I've done a lot of in other states, I've done less of in Texas. I expect I'll do more of it in Arizona, New Mexico, California as I move forward. There's a lot more public land and more woodland. It's really hard to stealth camp if you're in a desert. You're just out there in the middle of the field.
There's some quite flat and desolate area that I saw in your photographs.
I'm in a super desolate area, flat and desolate. It's surrounded by mountains, but it's kind of a dusty flat valley in between them right now.
My favorite memory of you is when people say Tony Cherolis. In my head, I'm thinking I'm out in the middle of nowhere somewhere, and along comes somebody with a Columbia 3-speed with a picnic basket, and that's you. That's the image I have, because you just be out there on this ridiculous bike, and I loved it. Anyway. All right, I'm following him along. I'm watching this adventure that he's taking, and then all of a sudden I see this one image that haunts me for like a week and a half, which was, we all find stuff on the side of the road. I found a knife once. You find keys, you find money, you find rubber duckies, you find all kinds of stuff, but you found a gun on the side of the road. Can you tell me what that was like?
It was just a wild experience. I was zipping along. I had a nice tailwind, I think, even. I keep a pretty good eye on the road just to avoid sharp stuff. I hate flats when I'm touring. It's kind of a pain to change a tire. So I was caught in my, downward peripheral vision, this gun shape, and it was rolled into the pavement. It was like they'd done like a chip seal on the road, and somehow this had been part of, it just got rolled right into the street. And I snapped a picture of it and posted it. And I did learn after looking at the photo and the brand more in detail that it was a BB gun and it was not a pistol. As a gun proud and gun toting state, it was fun to see that in the street. I was getting an ice cream sandwich yesterday and some chocolate milk at the gas station in a town I was going through, and the cashier had a revolver hanging in front off of a belt, very prominently displayed at the gas station while I was purchasing my ice cream sandwich, and it was just a fun snapshot of Texas culture here.
Yeah, you don't see that as so much in Connecticut.
Not as much in Connecticut. I've been in a few other states that are super gun happy. Indiana is one of those where I live now. I got a haircut, the worst haircut in my life, during a bike tour in that midlife crisis bike tour in 2022 in central Michigan in a small town, from a fellow that just had a gun stuck in his back belt in his pants. I wasn't about to tell him it was the worst haircut I'd ever gotten in my life since he was, packing heat.
It changes conversations.
Yeah, you certainly don't bring up anything controversial.
other thing that was kind of neat in terms of roadside artifacts, it's very desolate, so people can picture like desert. And then there's these huge, larger than life cutouts of Americana. What was that? And was there any warning about that, or is it just out there in the middle of nowhere, or what was it?
I was leaving Marfa, Texas, which is a quirky little town. I knew what it was because I stopped in at the local museum when I landed in Marfa, and the movie Giant with James Dean was shot outside of Marfa. So those were roadside art of, artistically showing scenes of the movie, which Marfa was very proud about being the setting for. So I've never seen this movie, the movie Giant with James Dean, but now I guess I have to go see it and figure out why they're so excited about it.
I mean, it looks fairly surreal.
Yeah, it was surreal. It felt very 3D, but when you got up, very close to it, they were just cutouts that were well painted, so they looked three-dimensional as you rode up or drove up on them. That was right down the road from Prada and Marfa, which is a fake storefront for Prada shoes and purses on that same street. Just a little artistic installation in a micro Prada storefront. Didn't make any sense, but that's what you get with, quirky Texas towns, I guess.
Sounds like fun. I mean, it looks like you're having fun.
Almost all the days have been fun. I've had a couple suffer days where it's been heavy headwind, but those just make the fun days more enjoyable.
I want to ask you this. Do you feel, as you're out there on your own, what's that feeling when you're out there touring by yourself? Because touring by yourself is so different. When you get inside your head, do you feel like you are removed from the planet? Do you feel like you're slipping off the earth, or do you feel like you're connecting more with it?
I interact with folks that I don't interact with in my daily life, and I find that I like people more during and after I go on a bike tour, because, the pressure cooker of news and social media is a lot about fear and rage and division. And once you're traveling and interacting with people, even if they're digesting a news source that's feeding them some fear and rage, you realize when you're interacting with folks one-on-one that people are people. They're generally friendly, welcoming, and want to put their, best foot forward with folks that are passing through or visiting. I don't know. I feel better about the world mostly while I'm traveling. That's one beneficial side effect. I think the other thing is it just removes me also from the news cycle a little bit, where I'm not being fed fear and rage, so that instead of that, I'm having a healthy experience and more likely to have a positive social interaction with the people I run into during the day. That's one piece of bike touring that's different from day-to-day life. You do spend a lot of time as a separate, individual out there, not talking to others, and gives you a whole lot of time to, think and plan and process stuff.
I found something about myself I learned to keep it secret, is that if I'm on a long tour, I tend to have a huge existential panic attack on day 2. Not day 1, because day 1's exciting, but day 2. And I found that the best thing to do is to totally keep it inside and not talk to anybody if there's anybody in my group, because they never end up reassuring me. But I've gotten better at this. It's just just keep your mouth quiet day 2, whether you're by yourself or not. Do you find any biorhythms like that for you?
That's an interesting part of your process. I feel a mild amount of panic the week before a big tour, but it's not something that would keep me from doing it, because I recognize it and I know it's just me freaking out about a change in my routine, and then I'll be fine once I'm going, once I'm moving, once I'm in the flow, and it's always fine. The other general routine or general process that I have is the first week or two, I'm not in as good of physical shape for longer tours. And I find that everything gets better after week 2. You know, your core strength, your saddle comfort, your legs really start to feel fine. You can put in a little more miles comfortably, handle bigger climbs without trouble. The weight of the bike you get used to because you're not usually riding with touring bags and touring weight when you're just commuting or riding around for fun. I'm solidly into that. I feel good about my physical abilities. That part, as I passed that line a couple weeks ago.
So how many miles a day are you doing?
I plan around 60 miles plus or minus 20. And I'm closer to 40 or 50 miles a day in the first week or two, depending on what kind of fitness level I start with. And then I try to take off a day a week, but I've not always done that. Sometimes it'll just be a short day during the week. But today is one of those break days, and I've needed it. I had several days that were intense climbs, intense headwinds, and a couple days that were closer to 80. So I'm enjoying that the weather made me stop today.
What else have you seen?
Louisiana and East Texas dogs. You know, I've never been chased by more dogs than the first 2 weeks of riding. And the thing I'd wanted to share with anybody who rides and has dog issues, even if it's just one dog on your trip, or if you're touring and you're getting all these surprise dogs that you've never met before, everybody has different ways they deal with dogs. And I've tried several of them. What I found to be the most successful and reliable, and the thing I always have handy, is my water bottle. Like, I don't have a special water bottle. It's just got whatever it's got in it. The only thing special about it is I have one of my bottles is a Camelback, and it's a larger one, so you don't have to actually pull the nozzle. You just squeeze and point. So when the dogs come pouring out of a yard at me, one or several, I first confuse them by telling them they're good boys and they're doing their best, and, cheering them on. And then I spray them in the face with my water bottle before they're close enough to remove any flesh. And they either love it, they hate it, they get confused, whatever it does, they lose their focus, and I'm able to remove myself from their territory, which is what I was trying to do in the first place. So I don't slow down. I usually speed up a little bit, spray them in the face, keep going. I even had a dog that seemed to be thirsty, and it started drinking the water off the pavement after I'd sprayed it. Mostly Louisiana and East Texas. Like, I've never been chased by more dogs than that segment at the beginning of this tour. And I'd read some of the diaries and notes from other riders that have ridden the Southern Tier adventure cycling route, and they had the same issue in those two areas. So I was kind of prepared for it, but it really surprised me. I got a few dogs last night coming into Fort Hancock here in West Texas, and this is the first time I'd had that issue. It was kind of a ramshackle community, and a lot of folks had dogs without leashes or fences last night on my way into the hotel. But water bottle method worked.
Water bottle method.
The water bottle method. One of the things that when I'm touring, and since I try to keep it a little loose, if somebody makes a good suggestion for a detour and I've got time to work it in, or stay a day at a place where there's something I should just not miss, or go do an extra, out and back, or ride with a group, I try to do that. When I was coming into West Texas, I'd heard from folks like, you really shouldn't skip Big Bend. You should go down there. And I was looking at the detour, and it's like a 300-mile detour. So it was almost going to add a week to the ride. And I was looking at it, and I'd heard that it's just so beautiful. The roads were low trafficked. I shouldn't skip it. And I heard enough of those that I said, sure, I'm going to do it. And I really got lucky. One of my friends from Illinois was going to be down in Big Bend camping for several days right when I was going to be hitting Big Bend. So I had a campsite lined up on New Year's Eve there where I just tucked in and hung out with them. And it was a highlight of the route. It wasn't officially on the Southern Tier route, probably because it is kind of a long detour, and it didn't have as many cities with accommodations in it. The Southern Tier route, they try to space it so that you have places to stay, so you don't have to stealth camp. But this route had a couple longer segments. At one night I had to stealth camp. It was otherwise great. And it included the biggest climb I've ever done in my life, from the Rio Grande Valley up the Chinati Mountain on dirt. It was a dirt road that was like rocky, and some places were loose gravel and a bunch of switchbacks. And it was, for a loaded tour, it was a climb that I kind of felt like it was almost a religious experience level of climb. These were amazing.
For people who are road cyclists and gravel cyclists who haven't toured before, you always pack more than you should. The weight when you're climbing on a touring bike is crazy. I mean, there were people walking faster than I was going on some hills. How steep and how long was this climb? How high did it get?
It topped out over 6,000 feet, and I started at the Rio Grande. So it was from valley to mountaintop. It was a significant climb. And in some places it was so steep and the surface was so loose, I would spin out the back tire and I was dragging the bike up the steep sections where it was even difficult to push the bike up the steep segments. Fortunately, I was able to ride most of it, because once you get off the bike, when it's that loaded, it's pretty tough to push up a hill.
I was going down with the full load.
Oh my gosh, I am so glad I went the direction I went, even though the climb was harder on the dirt and loose stuff. As soon as I got to the peak, it was mostly paved. So it was like a 25-mile tailwind descent into Marfa. I was big ringing it on smooth pavement with almost zero traffic for 25, 30 miles into my destination, where I had a warm showers host. Yeah, going the other direction, if I were descending that rocky loose stuff on the touring bike, it would have been harrowing. Even the few like dips and the downhills mixed in with the climb were a little stressful with the touring bike. I'm glad that I was descending on pavement. I wouldn't have had brake pads left if I went the other direction. After that huge climb, my warm showers host in Marfa wasn't home yet from work, and he texted me and was like, "Hey man, do you want to go out on the Friday night mountain bike ride with us?" And I was smoked. But also I was like, that sounds fun. So he gave me a mountain bike without brakes, and his boss had actually, right, borrowing a bike without brakes. That sounds like something Tony would do. Yeah, Manu, the guy who loaned me the bike, said, we'd already started riding, like pulled into traffic, and I grabbed the brakes and they squealed like crazy and the bike really didn't stop. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you the brakes don't really work. You just got to plan ahead." And I was like, and then we kept going. Yeah. He needed new brake pads and a brake bleed on that bike. Sometimes, there's an extra adventure in there. And we rode over, a mile away, and his boss had a couple acres where he carved in a little pump track mountain bike route with a lot of tight turns and whoops and jumps and bank turns, little 1 mile loop, and ripped around that a couple times. And boy, was I tired at the end of that day. I was finished, but I couldn't say no.
What is your favorite thing that you learned to bring with you when you're doing this, besides the bicycle itself?
The thing that I find relaxing an evening on bike tours is just having a paperback book in my tent and a little lantern light. For especially a winter tour, you're in the dark for a long time. It's short daylight, and you set up, you eat dinner, and unless you want to just sit outside in the cold and the dark, you usually climb into your tent. And having something, relaxing and chill to do in the tent is nice. And I love reading, and I tend to I'm omnivorous. I'll grab whatever book I can find that looks interesting in a free library that I pass, and I'll drop off the book I finish. So that's my like luxury weight item, is an actual book. This is probably the heaviest I've packed for a tour because the weather's so variable along this route. In the South, it's, been in the 80s on a few of these days, and it's getting down into the teens in a few of the mountain passes. So I have to pack for warm weather and then absolutely frigid weather. It's a pretty big range of camp gear. I did get rid of my mosquito spray because they just don't exist down here in the desert. That's something that I was used to carrying up north. Got rid of my short sleeve shirt and some shorts. Got rid of those about a week ago because they just weren't I wasn't wearing them. The weather wasn't warm enough for that.
Tony, do you have any resources that you'd like to share with people? Social media, any things that people want to find out more about your adventure or how to maybe do their own?
Yeah, this is the first big tour that I'm formally using a route designed and tested by the Adventure Cycling Association. So I'm riding their Southern Tier route, or most of the Southern Tier route. It runs from Florida to San Diego, and I'm riding at New Orleans to San Diego. I found that their maps, they have paper maps, but I'm using their electronic GPX maps that I'm reading into Ride with GPS to guide my trip without having to do most of the route planning independently. So that's been a big help. The other resource that I think is helpful to folks that are bike touring, whether it's an overnight or multi-week or multi-month, is warmshowers.com. You want a warm shower at the end of the day. It's a reciprocal hosting website, kind of like couchsurfing.com, but specific to bike touring, where folks will put you up for the evening or provide you a yard to camp in. You may even get dinner and breakfast. It's a super cool, great way to chat with folks when you're on tour so that you're not super lonely. Also, it helps you manage your travel budget. It's neat to be a host as well. I host in Indianapolis. I used to host in Connecticut. And I'll catch folks when they're coming through, treat them to dinner, and get to hear about their trips. And I'm thankful, of course, to Bicycle Garage Indy, BGI in Indianapolis, my current employer, for providing the flexibility to do fun adventures like this. They're a great shop in Indianapolis with 3 locations. I even get to do some bike touring classes and maintenance courses at BGI in addition to teaching learn to ride classes for new cyclists. So social media wise, I do post photos of my tour and bicycle travels and other bike fun stuff on Instagram. It's just my last name, which is Cherolis. That's Cherolis. And hope to cross paths with their fun bike tourists, and feel free to look me up if you're bike touring through Indianapolis on warm showers.
That's awesome, Tony. Thank you so much for sharing your stories again. We miss you up here, but it's fun to see that you're having adventures elsewhere.
Awesome. It's been great to talk to you again. I miss y'all.
Same here.
And now it's time to take a deep cleansing breath and give our mid-roll gratitudes. First and foremost, thank you for being especially patient and waiting for this episode to come out. I have a list of excuses as long as a tandem chain, but please know I've thought about it every single day, and I am committed to getting out episodes much more regularly, especially after school gets out. So thanks for understanding. I'd like to thank Frank in New Hampshire and all the other folks who asked for free stickers. This is a grassroots, honest way of letting people know about the show, as long as we don't stick it on trees and cows and birds and police cars. As long as you promise to stick them responsibly somewhere and share them with people who do the same, I will send you a pack of free stickers anywhere in the world as a thank you for listening. All the people who reach out with story ideas, the best way to get a hold of me is bikekarmaguy@gmail.com. That is the best place for asking for stickers or hitting me with a story idea. I'd like to thank Peddling Pensioner and all the other people who leave nice reviews on any place where you leave reviews, such as Apple Media is a good one. Sharing a positive review or leaving a rating not only helps me to feel good that day, but it also helps to raise our status. So when people are looking for a bicycle podcast, they'll see this one. It's a great free way of helping the show. Anyone who follows or subscribes anywhere you listen, especially Podbean, which is where we're hosted, also helps to raise us in the search results. So this one looks like just a random group of letters, but thank you, Z6H. Thank you for following on Podbean. Also, Heather W., Tarvin, Witrakwaya, Ben Williamson, that's easy, Ken Baker, Eb for 6 QE5 PJ, Kyle Weaver, Mark Perry, Corius G. Thank you all for following. The folks at Transit Cycles in Tucson, Arizona for putting out stickers and sharing a story you'll hear soon. Scotty Clark for a really nice email and hopefully maybe a story in the future. Thank you very much for following and sharing online. I have a very small and awesome group of folks on Patreon who just help me to pay with the cost of the show. I have to host it, buy some domain names, occasionally get equipment, sending out the free stickers, etc. So if you want, for as little as $1 a month, you can help me with the cost of the show. Just go to patreon.com and search up Bike Karma. Someone who became a big friend of the show was Fred Thomas. He was actually a guest and shared a story about bringing AD bikes back to life. He loved this brand and it kind of went under, and he bought the brand and brought it back to life for the 21st century. He's been helping me to pay for the cost of the show a little bit here and there. So if you want to show him some love back, go check out his primary two places, which is the Frame and Wheel, which will give you more time, space, and cash, especially if you aren't able to make it to a swap meet and you've got some really nice parts, maybe not a ton of them. Maybe they're takeoffs or perfectly good things that they're just not your preference. Could be tires, a certain chain ring, certain brakes, maybe even a whole bike or a helmet that's really nice and really expensive, but you tried it once and it wasn't for you. Well, if you get that to Fred, he can help you to sell it without you having to deal with any of their crazy people online. Fred photographs, identifies, lists, and navigates all those weird rules and all the people trying to scam you online when you're trying to sell stuff honestly. He's kind of a beast at it. Of course, he takes his fair cut, but then you don't have to deal with any of the hassle. Just sit back and wait for the check to come to you. You can also apply it to a charity, or you can apply it to a cost of a brand new AD bike. Fred can get really personal with you and help you to design a bike with the parts and specs that you're looking for, whether it's the key steel frame, handmade here in America, or a full-on carbon disc bike. Check him out at AD Bikes or the Frame and Wheel. Usually that is it for the thank yous, but I have a huge thank you. For over 15 years, we've been waiting for this bicycle trail over the Connecticut River. It's the Route 3 bridge, the Putnam Bridge. A long time ago, someone had the foresight to build a pedestrian/bike trail on the side of the bridge when it was being renovated, but there was not the funds or the momentum to connect that bridge to access points on both sides. Well, after years of being squeaky wheels, we finally got some grease. So thank you to everybody, the sympathetic politicians, the planners, the Connecticut DOT. We not only have a trail connection, we have a destination with a gorgeous view over the Connecticut River. So thank you to everybody who helped make that happen. More on that in a future episode. And if that wasn't good enough, thank you very much to everybody in my hometown who's taken the idea of bicycles on Main and run with it for the last several years. We started putting out decorated bikes to cheer each other up after the pandemic, and it's become a tradition in Old Wethersfield all May long. This year we had over 50 art bikes. I made a pirate one and a kinetic butterfly sculpture out of bike parts. As you turn the crank, it flaps its wings. Another person recreated the apartment from Seinfeld with the Klein bike hanging in the background. And probably one of the most beautiful bikes was Persephone, coming from the underworld, would make Flower Bike Man proud. If you missed it this year, don't worry, it'll be around next year during May. So thanks to the Old Wethersfield Shopkeepers Association, all the businesses, and all the just regular folks in town who helped to bring that together and make it just something wonderful, free, and nice. Now back to the show.
Good day, this is Rowan Debonair of the Velocipedium here in Lancashire, England. I'm here to remind you always to do your ABC quick check before every ride, no matter how short. So here we go. A is for air, check those tyres, which is spelt with a Y by the way. B is for brakes, C is for your chain, and quick is your quick release or your wheel nuts. Just check that those wheels are going to stay where they belong. Thank you, Tom, and here's wishing you all tailwinds and joyful cycling. Toodle pip!
For more than a decade, on the second Sunday in June, at Hamner Elementary School in Wethersfield, Connecticut, myself and the Wethersfield High School Bicycle Club host the Wethersfield Bicycle Festival, Show, and Swap Meet. Usually there are a minimum of a dozen sellers from all over New England. Some are bike shops, some are bike co-ops, some are just people like myself who love to fix up bikes and then swap, sell, and trade. There's usually at least 500 bikes just sitting out around a school for you to look at, appreciate, maybe ride, maybe buy. There's accessories, there's clothing, there's helmets, there's upgrades like tires and new chains and all kinds of stuff. People are always like, is there BMX? Yeah, there can be a lot of BMX or there can be less some years. It all depends on what shows up that day. Can there be mountain bikes? Yes. Is there new stuff and old stuff? Every year there is. If you've ever gone to Brimfield, it's like Brimfield for bikes, but only for a few hours in the morning around a school. There's a fair-like atmosphere to it as well. Families and children are welcome to come. We have a scavenger hunt with prizes where you go looking for different bikes in different countries, like find a bike from Italy, find a bike more than 100 years old. And there's some great deals to be had. I tell people it's like going to a gigantic bicycle flea market with yard sale prices. If you like bicycles or cycling at all, this is a feast for the senses. And it's totally free. General admission is free. If you want to bring one bike to try and trade, you can, and that's still free. Seller spots are only $25, and that goes right to the Wethersfield High School Bicycle Club. If we're blessed with good weather, we go wrap around the entire side of the school. If it's raining, we have a giant gym and cafeteria to go into, so it's rain or shine. You can vote on bikes, talk to lots of people who like the same kind of bikes you do. There's tons of advertising and signs, so you can decorate your house and workshop. I got a Kurahara BMX poster that had the bike that was used in E.T. on it from a guy who got it from the guy who actually helped to talk to Steven Spielberg into using that kind of bicycle. Sometimes we have bikes from 3 different centuries there. This year we're going to have a cargo bike section, a bunch of people with cargo bikes showing off and talking about and sharing and maybe even letting you give a try to their cargo bikes. So if you're interested and want to be a seller, it is bicycle stuff only pretty much, but make your way to the Stillman Board of Education building parking lot to line up for a gate opening at 7 a.m. on Sunday, June 9th for 2024. It's always the second Sunday in June. If you're just coming by yourself or with your family to come visit, general admission opens up after the setup at 8 a.m. and lasts until around lunchtime, maybe around 1 o'clock. Can come to Hamner School on Garden Street in Wethersfield. You can set the GPS for 50 Francis Street in Wethersfield, Connecticut. This year, we're hopefully going to have a food truck for the first time in a while. Our friends from Main Street Creamery are expected to show up with some coffee, some breakfast food, munchies, and then some ice cream. Everything usually wraps up by 1 o'clock, and at that point, you can go enjoy our town. You'll be right in the middle of a historic district of this nice little town in Connecticut. It is a great place to bike. We have a brand new bike trail connection to Glastonbury. You can go over the Connecticut River and hook up with the East Coast Greenway on the other side. You're less than a mile away from miles and miles of gravel down in the meadows. It's a dirt road that's closed up for most traffic through the farmland right next to the Connecticut River. It's gorgeous. And then there's tons of places to go eat after that. Even if it rains, we have space inside the building with a big gym and a cafeteria that we can just crowd in there and share. So rain or shine, hope to see you at the Wethersfield Bicycle Festival Show and Swap Meet. This year, Sunday, June 9th, starting 8 o'clock in the morning in Wethersfield, Connecticut. And if you're too far away to come, I'm sorry, check for one of the local swap meets in your area. This is the season, late spring, early summer, but I do hope to see you there. Take care. Thanks again for coming along with me on a ride at another episode of the Bike Karma Bicycle and Cycling Stories podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. A big thank you to Keller Glass and his former band Mobjack for our awesome opening and closing themes. Go check out and see what he's up to these days at kellerglassmusic.com. All the rest of the music we use is attribution-free, royalty-free, and we appreciate those musicians as well for helping us to bring life to our stories, so thank you to them. If you're from the region and have any thoughts about the new bridge bicycle path, what it means to you to have it finally opened up, I'd love to get your thoughts on the show. And if you have any constructive criticisms, comments, story ideas, you want some stickers to responsibly place, you can DM me on any social media, but the quickest way to get to me is bikekarmaguy@gmail.com. That's my email at bikekarmaguy@gmail.com. If this is your first show, please check out our back catalog. There's everything from century-old photographs of bicycles and people and why people wanted to take pictures with bicycles back then. We have stories about the evolution of BMX biking, mountain biking, biking with a cat, fighting Nazis by bicycles in France in World War II. We've had Calvin Jones of Park Tool, Charlie Kelly, one of the fathers of mountain biking, bike snob Evan Weiss, Mike Wolf from American Pickers, stories about the Buffalo Soldiers and their mission, haunted bicycles, pulling bicycles out of swamps, getting attacked by all kinds of animals while you're just out trying to cycle, from elephants to magpies. And about once a year, there's also a comedy skit show. Imagine SNL meets SCTV and Monty Python and lower your expectations and go have a laugh. Everything except for the music on the show is the intellectual property of Thomas Brown. All rights, including copyrights, trademarks, etc., are asserted and reserved. So from one real bike riding person to another, not AI trying to pretend to be something that isn't. Thank you for coming along with me for the ride this time, and until next time, keep it wheel.